Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome to the ISKCON Ministry for Agriculture and Cow Protection Facebook page. I'm Karunamayi Devi Dasi, speaking with you from the UK, and today I'll be speaking with Krishna Kirtan Das, who is in Australia. Today's segment we'll be speaking on the importance of bullocks in the modern age. So Krishna Kirtan Prabhu has been engaged in cow protection projects across Australia for over 25 years and currently lives near the new Govardhan eco village in northern New South Wales, Australia, where he has been managing the bullock care and training program for over 4 years. As a part of this service, he cares for some incredibly and extremely impressive looking bullocks, and we'll be sharing pictures of them and their training in the comments below on the Facebook page after the talk. This care covers the daily care, feeding and training, and also engages volunteers and guests in the service. And through this, he also brings them closer to Krishna. And on a personal note, this is how I took up devotional service and started reading Srila Prabhupada's books when I was a volunteer in the Krishna village in Australia, and KK took me under his wing. So welcome, Krishna Kirtan, and thank you so much for joining us today.
It's a pleasure. Very happy to see you.
It's so nice to see you too. So let's get straight into it. Can you please start by sharing a brief history and your understanding of bullocks, which are also known as oxen, so bullock training within ISKCON and outside of ISKCON?
Okay, so as far as history of bullocks is concerned, they've been around since the very beginning of existence. There's never a time where there hasn't been bullocks or cows. Yeah, so from the internal point of view, from the Krishna consciousness movement point of view, we have to understand that bullocks have been around, and cows, since it's stated in the Padma Purana that first, this is a verse there, a segment when Narada Muni is hearing from Lord Brahma, that first the Vedas were manifested, then fire, then cows, then brahmanas. So that's, and it's stated there, without these four things, the whole universe would have been devastated by now. So they're very significant entities for a successful human civilization to exist and create an atmosphere that's conducive for spiritual life. And cows are very, very wonderful. So people have been working and training, I guess, bullocks in all over the world. They still do. There's many third world countries throughout Africa and parts of South America and Asia where people are still dependent on the cows and bull. And if you go back 100 years ago, a lot more, especially all the whole of India, would have functioned very, very nicely with a village system with cows. People were dependent on the cows and the bulls. The bulls were highly respected because they were like we say in our scriptures, the father of the community. They provided not only just food for humans, but food also for the cows and bulls, because they would grow grains. The heads of the grains would be harvested, such as wheat and other grains, and then the stalks and leaves would feed the cows and the bulls. So they were actually feeding the whole of the community. They were respected and looked after as a member of the family. As far in ISKCON, devotees have been trying to train, and have successfully trained and worked bullocks since pretty much the days of New Vrindavan, and it's been going on. I'm not familiar what goes on exactly all over ISKCON farms because I'm not much on social media, but I've seen wonderful footages of the manor and the farm in Hungary and Brazil and parts of India and Australia over the years. So it's difficult for us because we're very much embedded in Western society, where everything is fast and quick. Fast food, fast phones, fast cars, and working with bullocks is a totally different pace of life. Yeah, but originally the pace of life was governed by the bullocks. And we find here in New Govardhan, when people come in contact with bullocks and experience that pace, they're very much become very peaceful, very relaxed, and appreciate it very much. Yeah, we've become a bit too quick, our modern society. So bullocks have been trained for a very long time. Cows have been sacred and protected since the very beginning of time. There's never been a time when cows were not domesticated. Modern archaeologists are still trying to find out the origin of the first cows being domesticated, but I read an article recently, they think about 8,000 years ago in Europe, which of course we know that's not true. But then if you read the article, the fine print, they say, actually, we've been researching for decades, we don't really know. And the fact is they'll never know because it's beyond their time span of understanding from the very beginning of creation. So cows have been around for a long time, always been domesticated. Sometimes people ask, what would they do in the wild? I said, I don't know what they would do in the wild because there's no such thing as a wild cow. Cows have always been protected and domesticated, and they're totally dependent on us. And when you serve and work around cows, you'll see they're always looking at us for assistance and help, especially when it comes to food. Like that. So yes, it's been going on for a long time. What else have you got?
Well, I've briefly laid out what you do in your service on New Govardhan, but could you tell us a bit more about what it is in your service to the bullocks that you do?
Yeah, so I guess I could say what I do is perhaps unique in ISKCON because I started this, 30 years ago, an idea of not just being a bullockie, like a bullock that looks after a person that looks after a couple bullocks. And I've seen a lot of devotees that do train bullocks. They can sort of become a bit like loners. They're just off on their own with a couple of bullocks and can be very productive. But I realised we're breeding a lot of bulls and they all need to be accounted for. So I started the program, which perhaps is not as effective as one person's concentrating on 2 or 3 or 4 bullocks, of accounting for every bull that's born on the property. And as soon as they're weaned off their mothers, they come to us. We have a bullock and training program. And from a very early age, from the age of 6 months, they begin their training. And all the bulls are trained the same system, same commands, and in the same fashion. And they can all our bulls that we have in the program, we've got about 20-something bullocks at the moment that have gone through the program, and they can all pull a log, they can all wear a single yoke or be yoked up with another bullock. They can all pull a little cart or a little plough. So they all learn the basics. And ultimately, their final training would be with the person that's going to be working with them, specifically doing a particular service where they fine-tune the training. The advantage we have with this program, many people can come along and experience working with bullocks. And I mean very quickly because the training methods are very simple and easy for people to follow. We have guests and permanent devotees, bhaktas, and people who live in the ashrams that can come on the very first day and be doing some work with the bullocks. They can be pulling some chains and spreading cow dung or pulling a log. That's how quick we can train. So the idea of this program, every bullock is accounted for. They're also, by having the bullocks come through the program, you understand their nature. Not all bullocks are the same. We've had some that have been quite dangerous and have a tendency to attack and horn people and guests. So those we have to move on to the other side of the property where we have another program with our retired cows, and they're a little bit out of sight and away from people. And then we have those that are very quiet and excellent around people. So those we can pull out when there's bus tours, school groups, festivals like that. We know they're not going to be in any danger to anybody. They don't mind cartels being played in their ears and madungas and people all around them, and they're as happy as Larry. So by having all the bullocks go through the program, you can understand the natures and you can engage them accordingly. Some are a bit rough around the edges, and you might take them up the mountain and just drag logs or piles of rocks or whatever you need to do with them, away from people. And they're very quiet and intelligent ones that can listen very carefully, good in agriculture because they'll keep a straight line and walk nicely and do as they're told. So we get to know them very well, and then we can match people up with them as well. So I don't know if that's the best way to go. I'm not actually a farmer. I'm more interested in the bullocks from a preaching point of view, because on our farms we have to practically show the philosophy. The philosophy has to come to life, and we often speak about cows and Vrindavan and the lifestyle. And if people come to our farms and we can't practically show them how to care for bullocks and cows, and our preaching will be weakened, I think. So we should be more excited as to do this for preaching rather than monetary or farming reasons, because from a monetary point of view, it's going to be very difficult to justify looking after bulls and cows at all, because we keep the whole herd alive. And for the little bit of milk we produce, you can't justify. So we have to have sponsors, and here at New Govardhan we have restaurants that create income that allow us to support a bullock and cow program. Otherwise, it would be very difficult in this modern age.
Yeah. Well, I know that by that sponsorship scheme as well, it really helps people to connect to the bullocks. So, and like we said at the beginning, there will be pictures of these bullocks in training, pulling logs and pulling carts and working in the organic veggie gardens at the Govardhan. So make sure you check those out at the end. So Krishna Kirtan, some people say that bullock training is no longer necessary because we have tractors and machines now to do the work that they were previously used for. What's your response to this?
So who are these some people? You're saying within our society?
It's actually within our society and in the broader society.
Yeah.
So I've personally heard these comments.
Yeah, or even the farmers themselves have been replaced. Now they've got tractors as big as houses that are run by GPS and computers. You don't even have to sit in them anymore. So you can say everything has been taken over by machines ultimately and technology. But the Hare Krishna movement with the alternative, positive alternative, we have a culture that's timeless, that's existed and been tested throughout times. And ultimately the culture that we want to demonstrate and live ourselves personally in our hearts and externally is the Vrindavan culture. Prabhupada said, make Vrindavan villages. And Vrindavan is the lives of the residents of Vrindavan is around cows. So it's not about trying to do something mechanically and quicker. And also this modern methods, as effective as they may seem, are proving to be problematic. On the earth itself, the pollution, the quality of the lives of the farmers. There's a lot of depressed farmers because all their labourers, including the bulls and that normally would be working with them, and other working class people are not there by their side. They're on their own. They're by themselves. High rates of suicide, high levels of debt, because to buy these machines and maintain these machines, it's very, very expensive. You've got to take out loans, land. You have to produce more than you normally would, and then you have to use chemical fertilizers and all sorts of other means. So it becomes problematic and not sustainable, and we're seeing this problem worldwide. So this very simple lifestyle of a village lifestyle is more attractive, socially more effective. People become more joyful. When you work with cows and bulls, and other people, your whole life changes. You're not just stuck in a machine on a tractor 8 hours a day on your own, So what do I say to people who say that we don't need bulls? I go, maybe you should try some bulls yourself. And otherwise, you can say, why do we need farms? Why did Srila Prabhupada establish farms? So we have a sound philosophy, and part of our philosophy is cow protection. Cow protection doesn't mean just not killing animals. It means positively engaging them. So obviously the cows, everyone understands the cows produce milk, and there's a big push by the GBC for this ahimsa milk. All our temples should be producing ahimsa milk. People all over the world are becoming more concerned with cruelty to cows and other animals. And what I say, we should be producing ahimsa food, ahimsa grains, because all the bulls are also killed and replaced by these tractors that you mentioned, and they have no value in society, and then people just want to kill them. So by promoting tractors and saying that we should just have machines, and then we deny the bulls their duty. Their natural duty is to serve the community by tilling the fields and carting our goods. So yes, so by replacing the bulls, we're creating great violence by having tractors. So the food that we eat that's grown by tractors that we buy in the supermarket means that bulls weren't required, so they were slaughtered instead. So just like we're trying to make a case for ahimsa milk, I'm making a case for ahimsa food, ahimsa grains. So if you want to have pure food to offer to your lordships, and then produce them utilizing bulls. Mother Bhumi is very pleased when those hoofs are on the earth, The cow dung is very wonderful. I mean, the cow dung is so valuable, it's gold, but we haven't learned to understand the value of cow dung yet and all this various usages. So we've sort of gone backwards If you look at India, even now, but especially 50 years ago, much nicer. As soon as they introduced the idea of tractors, then they sold off all their bulls. Then they had no tractor, no plows, so they had to obviously buy a tractor. They had no fertilizers because the cows were gone. They had to buy chemical fertilizer. Then they had to farm more land, so they had to buy more land. They had to borrow more money. And a lot of the family had to leave the village and go to the cities to work. And that's basically destroyed the whole social structure of India and created a mess. Now you've got all these people living in slums in the cities that could have lived very nicely in the countryside, engaged with the bulls, growing their own food without requiring artificial fertilizers and machines coming from other places and so on. So what to speak of oil and spare parts and all the mines and the industries behind the shipping. We have tractors on the farm. One of our tractors broke down, and we were waiting for 2.5 months or more for a spare part from China. So that's if you want to live, that's what's going to happen. Yeah. So you're going to be reliant on all sorts of hellish industries where people are abused, and also all those factories in China, people are dragged from their villages, also destroying their social culture. So it's very important that we reintroduce this culture however we can, bit by bit. It's very valuable. It's sustainable. People will see this as an actual positive alternative. It doesn't wreck the planet. People have nice, healthy lifestyles, and the quality of food is superior because it's grown in this wonderful environment. It's not processed away somewhere else. They don't need to eat bananas from the Philippines and potatoes from Canada, and it's ridiculous. So local food, local production, and engage the bulls, and you'll see people will become happy and satisfied. So a little bit of faith is needed. A little bit of faith is needed.
So you've been successful in engaging many people in this service, guests, volunteers, your own family and friends. So how can we continue to do that, and how can other places encourage people to be engaged in this service?
You've got to understand the value of it, and also we have a duty as the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. If we have farms and we breed cows, automatically we're going to have bulls, so we're duty bound to take care of them, minimum to take care of them. So that's why we call our program a care, New Govardhan care and training program. First, you've got to take care of them, and they're domesticated animals. So first we teach people how to look after them. That's all their health, their hoof care, their ticks and injuries and whatever else it may be. They're properly sheltered and cared for, and they have access to proper food all year round. And you've got to understand what that is, what they need, and then training them so they can be useful. And it might be just for show at first. And we find that people just, when they see the bulls out, they just, because we have a lot of guests that drive in and off, on and off the property all day long, and they all stop and they all pull their phones out and take photos and ask questions. You see nobody taking photos of tractors and asking questions about tractors, and which means, and plus tractors and machines are moving too fast for people to stop and talk. Bullocks are such a nice, sweet pace that you have time to have conversations with people, and they inquire, and they're quite amazed at what we're doing. That some people didn't even know you could do. You could actually work bullocks and farm and do all the other things. So it's actually care for them. You train them, even if it's a little bit of activity at first, and then you try and find some employment for them. We don't have a lot of employment even on our farms at the moment, even here in New Govardhan, but we try and get them to spread cow dung, to fertilise the paddocks, to do a little bit of cultivating in between the vegetables, the rows of vegetables, and do some bit of weeding but mainly the people are able to interact with them, and they can't believe that they're so approachable. So they have personalities. Some of them are quite naughty, as you know. Some are quite responsible. Some are a little bit moody. But people, when they have that interaction with cows, and it's very easy to speak about the philosophy and Krishna himself as a cowherd boy. And we have a program every Saturday now. Manly brings guests. It's like a tour of the cow program. And one of the things we do with them when they come down, we give them all a bullock stick. and we go out herding. And we take, because it's not much feed where they are, so we take them around different places around the farm, and people experience that wonderful lifestyle of taking the cows herding every day and taking care of them and then bringing them back. And it's a one. And we've had guests that have been totally moved by this experience. They've said this has been the highlight of our visit, and especially those that aren't strict vegetarians, so we're never going to be able to meet again. We're going to tell all our friends about it. And so pictures and articles and positive things go all over the internet about the Hare Krishna farm and the bull program. And it's an eye-opener for a lot of people, even for devotees themselves. And that's what I say. So that's what we do here. We engage.
It's
especially the youth.
Yeah.
So I was going to say, especially the youth. I'm very interested in the youth. Yeah, we will. So the majority of the people that I have, everybody that I have is under the age of 30, and they from the age of 7, they come in and get involved. And some come once a week, some come every day. Also, from time to time, the gurukuls will send a group of students. And my idea is we learn as much as we can ourselves. We teach whatever we can. We try and pass it on, so it becomes a regular program, and all our farmers, that bullocks are trained, looked after, and engaged in various activities. And they're also very good preachers. So people love the bulls. They just can't believe how big they are, and their big horns, and you can pat them and be with them, and they're safe. And the fact that they listen to commands and they stop and go, and it's impressive. And our farms are there for practical application of philosophy. Like Prabhupada, we've only got one letter to Srila Prabhupada to send us to New Govardhan in August of 1977, when he was very ill, and was through his secretary, Tamal Krishna Maharaj, and he said, he said the cities are for preaching, for book distribution, and all these other things, but the farms we have to show practically what we do, specifically with the cows, because not killing them is a good thing, but then what do you do with them? So if we can't show people they have some value alive, then they're going to question our philosophy. So we have to bite the bullet. And like I say, I do it out of duty. And like I was saying earlier, if everyone was doing bullocks and no one was doing Harinam, I'd be on Harinam. So I'm not a farmer, but I see the need for our movement to incorporate very seriously the bullocks in our farming communities and show practically their value.
So you mentioned there about engaging youth. We will be having a talk soon with Mandali Kishori Devi Dasi from New Govardhan about engaging the youth in cow protection. KK, we've had a question from someone who's watching the live stream.
Go ahead.
And they are interested in understanding, why do we use... it's from Tom. Tom was one of the devotees who used to help us.
I can see the question online, yes.
Yeah. So hi Tom, thanks for listening. He used to help myself and KK when we looked after the cows and bullocks on New Govardhan farm in Australia, and he would like to know, why do we use rings?
Ourselves specifically, yeah. Well, I've always used nose rings. I see them as an emergency brake. Also, because we go amongst the members of the public, we've got to be able to control these massive creatures, and when they get spooked, they can cause some harm, especially if you have young children around, guests, property like vehicles, and so many other things. So we train them by voice command, and secondly by stick command, and thirdly by nose command, nose control. So nose is always a backup. So I have 2 young bulls now. I call them my Bluetooth boys. I control them solely by voice with no leads on them at all. I yoke them up and off we go, and they just listen to me, do what I say. So we're not even connected. So you can have bulls that can do that, but some of the very strong, they can get cranky also when they're working because they want to stop or whatever. They can be moody, and we have to be able to control them. And this is something that's been going on since time immemorial. There's references all over the Srimad Bhagavatam on how a bull is controlled by the nose, or appears through the nose. And Lord Brahma even says it himself. So there's references in Brihat Bhagavatamrita, which of Goloka Vrindavan, which is not even in this material world, where Krishna catches a bull and pierces his nose so they can go on bullock cart rides. So the bull is controlled by the nose. That's their weakest point. You see, if they feel threatened, they put their noses down, protect their noses, and show their horns. Right? So The nose is the most vulnerable spot, but we don't abuse that nose. We just utilize it to remain in control. And it's important that we remain in control, especially when amongst public, but we don't hurt them. And yeah, I firmly believe in using nose control especially for emergencies. I wouldn't have it any other way. Some of these bulls are so big, and also we have many of them, and they're all different natures. Maybe if you had 2 pet bulls that you had your whole lives, you'd feel safe and have control over them. But when you have many, we need to be able to control them. We need to bring them into crushes, back them into crushes where they're tipped over, and we can trim their hoofs and provide care for them. If a vet has to come and sew up a wound or something, I need to be able to catch them, keep them under control like that. So it's for their own benefit, and they're pretty good. And you can tell when a bull is good about his nose, because our bulls, we have a command that we say nose, and they give us their nose. So and some of them don't like to give it, but they generally give it. So we use a command. That's one of the commands we teach them, to hand over their noses. We teach them that by giving sweets when they're young. We say nose, they reach for the sweet. We get their nose, they get a sweet. Eventually, they hear nose, they think sweet, they give us their nose. So in the case of Hare Krishna Farms, we have many members of the public. I think it's important to be able to control them properly and responsibly. And I think even in Australia, it's a law that if you have a bull in the public arena, it has to have a nose ring. So we don't really have a choice like that.
So we had another question come through, and they were asking about castration. So the reason that their animals are called bullocks or oxen is that they have been castrated. So why is it necessary for us to do that?
Well, if you're going to have a breeding program, you can't have unlimited bulls on the property. So generally up to 50% of your cows will produce male offspring. And it's a science. Breeding, you can't have inbreeding. You can't have the son breeding with the mother or the sister. So you have to have control over breeding. So generally, specific bulls are selected for breeding due to the genetics and various reasons. The bulls that are desirable to breed with. Same with the cows. And otherwise, you'd have all sorts of weird-looking cows and bulls if you didn't control the breeding. And by castrating them, it also changes their nature. They develop. Their body changes and they become more suitable for working. Something that's been done for a long, long time. You can also work, bulls themselves that aren't castrated. But certain bulls are a bit more aggressive and more dangerous when they're not castrated, especially if there's females on heat around. It becomes very difficult to control them. When they be castrated bulls, are more docile, more simple, and easier to work. And something that's, as far as I know, has been going on for all times. I don't know a time where they haven't castrated bulls. Otherwise, you'd have millions of bulls running around the planet, and it'd be quite difficult to control the breeding.
So, which you do see on the streets in India, in fact, because they're not controlling the castration of any of the bulls because they're street cows. There's an unlimited amount of new births of cows that are just not being looked after. So you can see through that why it would be much more beneficial and important to castrate.
It's been responsible, and they develop. It's interesting if you look at their body. Sorry, I was just going to say, if you look at their body shape, it develops nicely for work. You get nice, big, tall shoulders, and off they go. Okay, go ahead.
And what do you feel is the bullock's responses to getting trained? Because you say you want to be able to bring them into areas where they're with people and working in the gardens. How do they respond? Do they want to be doing this? Is it something they enjoy?
Yes. Well, yeah, again, there's different characters, but overall they do like being trained. They do like being looked after. They do like to be engaged. You find when they get bored, and they do get bored, just like sitting around all day, you can chew your cud for so long. So a lot of them, they look forward to going out, even if it's just for a walk. A lot of them, we do regular, what we call, I guess, training for work. I see the program that we have like a bit like Army Reserve, or what do they call them in America? Anyway, like in Australia, you have Army people that train just on the weekend, just in case they'll be needed one day. So we like to have all the bulls trained, even though they're not all employed. but ready for work. So what we do, a lot of bulls, if they haven't done any work for some time, a couple of times a week, we'll take them for a walk, dragging a log or doing something so they get some exercise, maintain their fitness. So when they do need to work, they work. As far as they do like it. We've got a young boy now, 24 years of age, French boy that's staying on the farm in the ashram. Very enthusiastic. He comes 6 days a week to the Bullocks for many hours, and he just wants to do more and more and more. And recently I've given him one bull, which I trained when he was little, of Hanuman. He's now maybe 3.5, coming closer to working age. So he needs to start to do more. And Joris has been taking him out, and they love each other now. Whenever Joris goes in the paddock, he calls Hanuman. Hanuman comes to him. Even if he's not ready to do anything, Hanuman will just be hanging around to do something. Of course, we feed them as well, so that's an attractive feature. And it's good to have a bit of a reward system for them. That way they associate work with a good thing. We like to finish on a good note, so they're always rewarded after work. The training is very gradual. It's like people. If you've been sitting around doing nothing, you don't just go to the gym and start lifting 500 kilo weights. You gradually work your way towards it. So same with the bulls. Their training is very gradual. We introduce small logs and the bigger logs and longer distances and steeper hills. We keep an eye at how they respond, so we don't push them to the point where they get spooked and don't want to do anything, and because they can go on strike and become spoiled. If you have a spoiled bullock, it becomes very difficult. You want a bull to have faith in what you ask them to do, so whatever it is, they know they're capable of doing it because you've gradually built that up. So at the very beginning, when they're very young, we do very simple training with them, just for short minutes a day, and we increase it. And you've seen what we've done with them, what we do with them. And then for that same little bit of interaction and reward, which is we give them these sweet molasses ball at the end of training. They'll work for 5 minutes the first day, and then eventually they'll plow a whole paddock for that same sweet, And there's stories of bulls. I've seen videos of bulls that turn up for work every day and even throw the yoke onto their own necks themselves. They're basically saying, "Let's go." It's their dharma. This is what they're supposed to do. We're not trying to impose something on them artificially. The bulls are created and designed to work. And when they're unemployed, not working, that's more cruel, because they get arthritis, they become bored. They can also become a bit mentally disturbed from not being active. That's my answer to that question.
Nice. Krishna Kirtan, I was going to go on to ask, and someone here has asked a relevant question to go with my next question. With people starting up bullock training projects, is there an inexpensive way to do this? Because some people are concerned when engaging in cow protection of the money side of things.
Of course.
And then, so we'll start with that, and then we'll go on to the second question that's been asked here on the chat.
So as far as, for starters, if you've got bulls and cows, you must have some money, because you have to have property. So it's not something a poor man's going to do. If in ISKCON we have property, and if we're breeding cows for milk, then you've got to understand you're going to have bulls. So there has to be some sort of means for supporting them. So as far as maintaining the cows, that has to be there anyhow, whether you train them or not. You've got to take care of them and feed them. As far as training, you can do it obviously on the cheap. All you need is a way to, like a nose ring or a halter when they're younger. We start them with halters and a lead and a stick. You can pick up a stick anywhere off the ground. So that's the only paraphernalia you need at first to train bulls. A little stick and a lead. If you can't afford to buy a fancy lead from the animal shops with brass fittings, you can do what I do. I buy rolls of rope, I cut them, and I buy little clips, and I just tie them on. Costs you about $3. So the paraphernalia to train is very cheap, and the main thing is to be regulated. They like to do the same thing every day. You can't just change and swap around. They like predictability. They like doing the same thing. So if you want to introduce new things, you do it gradually. We find our bulls when we walk around, if we take them somewhere different, they slow up all of a sudden, they start getting nervous. Or if they see something different, like Big Shanti, our biggest bull, is one of the gigantic bull, probably close to a ton. He saw the other day I was walking with him. He saw a pram on the side of the road, a baby pram. He almost jumped out of his skin because that wasn't there the day before. When Jita Prabhu introduced more speed humps on the property to slow cars down a bit, the bulls, what the hell these things were on the road. They didn't want to even step over them. So so they like the same, and you've got to be patient with them. That's why I tell everybody working with bulls, it introduces patience and determination into our lives, which is the mode of goodness. In the mode of passion, you have lots of determination, but not much patience. And in the mode of ignorance, we have plenty of patience and no determination. So I introduce this understanding when people work with bullocks, they have to be patient and also determined. You've got to be able to stick it out, and it's slow, but it's a different pace, and it's a wonderful pace. I've totally forgotten your question, by the way. What was the question again?
We were talking about, I like where you've gone with it, but we were talking about the costs.
The costs, exactly. Yeah, so the costs aren't very much. And then as far as implements, you can get, we want to buy some nice costly implements from the Amish because they make very first class, and other people around the world also. Otherwise, you can make things, you can repair old rusty things if you like. Then the next thing is a yoke. A yoke you make yourself, which is a piece of wood shaped and carved and sanded down with a couple of holes in it. And there's various kinds of yokes you can use. People use also upside down horse halters you can use, horse collars they call them. There's various styles of yokes in different cultures. We use pretty simple yokes, which is just a piece of wood shaped and curved and sanded. And then you have bows, which is, you can make them out of steel, but you can make them out of other things. I've seen the Tillers International, they get electrical conduit, and they fill it with sand and they heat it up gradually and they bend it to shape, and they use that as bows that fits under their neck. So that can be very inexpensive also, very simple. The equipment's pretty simple, but then when you get into carts and fancy plows and all that, it can cost you a bit more. But then there's obviously the time for the people to spend. If you're not earning money from the bullocks, you've either got to have the spare time or be supported by the temple, which I think it's a worthwhile service to support. It's important for our preaching that we demonstrate bullocks. So otherwise sponsors or businesses or other things that can help it. The bullocks aren't going to make cash. We can't see bullock training in a monetary way. We've got to see it more of the subtle benefits that come from it, from the auspiciousness, from pleasing the Lord, from pleasing Prabhupada, from demonstrating the culture. We have to see that as the rewards. And also the cow dung is very valuable also because you can produce wonderful crops and vegetables with cow dung. So it's an incredible substance. You can also cook with it. And there's a lot of things you can do with cow dung, things we've forgotten. I often tell people that now in India and other places they use refrigerated warehouses to store grains, and they use insecticide and they spray them with all sorts of things to keep bugs off them. That's very expensive. But if you're talking about cost, if you can burn cow dung and mix the ash with the grains, that'll keep them bug free for 2 years. So not much cost involved in that. So, but as far as maintaining people to do bullocks, that's a challenge, of course. So you can see I'm self-funded and maintained and a bit older, and I used to do business before. I'm able to have the time to do this now. But our ashram devotees and our guests can get involved. They're being maintained, housed and fed. And the rest of it, because we're introducing a culture that's lost, that's going to be gradual and a challenge. But I think we should do it as an essential department on our farms as part of our preaching. And as far as monetary challenges, they have to be met as best as we can and through various means. But we shouldn't use that as an excuse not to do it, that we can't afford it. If we can't afford to do bullocks, then we can't afford to have farms, because you're going to have, if you want milk, you're going to have bulls. They go hand in hand. So according to time, place, and facilities, do as much as you can. And if you receive some donations, some monetary assistance, then do more. That's all I can say on that.
Great.
But don't give up. Don't give up on it.
Yeah, I do remember when when I first started serving the bullock care and training program with you, that you did, the first thing you said was that some people think that cows or bullocks are stupid, but in fact they are just slower. So when we slow down to that level, it helps us to engage in the tolerance and compassion and patience. So that's something that definitely always stuck with me.
Yes.
Krishna Kirtan, do you have any memorable moments within your service to the bullocks, or any stories that you can tell us that may inspire others?
Well, generally, for starters, working with cows and bulls is very, it's a subtle sort of energy that they give that's hard to put into words. It's very wonderful and satisfying and addictive. They're very sacred creatures. We know all the demigods reside in them, and they're very dear to Krishna. Krishna spends a lot of time with his cows also. I find it's a lot easier to remember Krishna and Vrindavan when you're working with the cows. It's just they go hand in hand, and we often talk about Krishna and the cowboys and other activities of Vrindavan. I also like to use the idea that just like we have Raganuga Bhakti as one of our goals in developing our bhakti, we want to come to the point where we're following in the resonance of Vrindavan. So also on our farms should be Raganuga communities. We, as much as we can, we invoke the mood of Vrindavan. We're not interested in just self-sufficiency just for the sake of it. We want to create an environment that reminds us of Krishna. So for me, that's a highlight every day. The cows remind me of Krishna. I always tell people these aren't just ordinary cows. These are Radha Govardhandari's cows. They're his cows. So when you're serving them, you're serving the deities. And you have to take great care when you do that. It's a great responsibility. And it's a duty. So when you get involved with cows, they do draw you in. It's very difficult not to leave them once you start serving them, because you realize their needs. As far as the highlights, it's just nice to see young bulls starting to understand what you're trying to do with them. They start reciprocating. I remember a long time ago, about 30 years ago, at Cessnock Farm, it was a memorable moment. We had a fancy four-wheel drive tractor and got bogged. Couldn't get it out of the mud. The thing was stuck. And all we could do is get some bullocks. Nothing, there was no other access. And with these two young bulls, their names were Gokul and Nanda. They were the first two bulls born on that property, and very well trained by a devotee called Mandana. And they listened. They had no fear of any command you would give them. They had full faith in the trainer. So we hooked them up to the tractor, and it was difficult. But they were determined, and they eventually got on their knees. And they wanted to get this thing out, and they did it. They pulled the damn thing out. And they were so happy. Because if you observe bullocks and cows very carefully, they have facial expressions. You can see them smile. You can see them, frightened or sad or in pain or whatever. They're expressive creatures. So if they could have given themselves a high five or a high hoof, they would have. They were very proud of themselves. So yes. So when you achieve something with them, it's quite rewarding. And when you see young people become attached to them and understand, because you can explain the philosophy as well. When you work with cows, it's more easier to explain Vrindavan. And so I think we've got to go more towards that way. Srila Prabhupada, in that single letter we have to the farm, he said Krishna and Balaram, they're the farmacharyas. So that's a significant statement, So he said Balaram is holding the plow and Krishna has a calf, or sometimes he says he has a rope for tying the cow's legs at the time of milking. So this is the supreme abode and a supreme culture and lifestyle that we want to envelop in ourselves as much as we can, at least by hearing about Vrindavan. But if we engage in some of the activities that the residents of Vrindavan engage in on a day-to-day basis is wonderful also. And I think it's attractive that people will see it, especially when they experience it. Everyone that comes in contact with our Bullock program has it affects them even if they're not able to stay and they move on, it affects them for life. It's a wonderful experience. And if you haven't experienced it, come and spend some time with the cows and the bulls. Highly recommend it. So maybe some specific moments, but it's really all the time. It's just nice being around them. They're wonderful creatures and they remind us of the Lord.
That's great. Thank you so much, KK, for being with us today and speaking on what is such an important topic. And I'm looking at the comments. You've definitely inspired a lot of people. There's a request for you to do a yolk making course.
Hare Krishna.
So, but we hope to hear from you again in the future.
I'll finish with one thing, if you don't mind.
Yes, please.
I'm not a farmer, or I was brought up in cities, and the first 10 years I was in city. Before I started with Bullocks 30 years ago, I was a city devotee for 10 years. So I've always been involved in preaching, either going out Sankirtan or collecting or putting on programs, festivals, which I did for many years. So my mood with the Bullocks is more of a preacher rather than a farmer. I'm not driven, to grow crops and all that sort of things. But I see this as a preaching department on our projects, specifically our farms. So it's very important to develop, because you can, like I've been saying through this interview, that we can reach and influence a lot of people in a positive way, in a practical way, that will also attract them to the philosophy. So we have to see this as a preaching program, and that has also other benefits, but we have to teach. We have to learn as much as we can and pass them on to the next generation, so it becomes part of a natural way of life for us, rather than something that's a bit foreign and unachievable. So anyone want to say that?
Thank you so much, KK. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Please stay posted on the Facebook page to see the pictures of the new Govardhan bullocks in training below in the comments. That will be uploaded soon. And stay tuned for the next, and there we have the tag for the new Govardhan Australia's Instagram and Facebook page, which is full of fantastic pictures uploaded by Manjali Kishore, a full-time devotee caring for the cows on the farm, and who we will also be interviewing soon. So stay tuned to find out when we'll be interviewing Manjali Kishore. Thank you again, Krishna Kirtan.
And thank you kindly for putting him up with me.
Hopefully we'll speak again soon.
Yes, you take care.
Hare
Krishna. All goes to Srila Prabhupada.
Jai.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna. Karunamayi.
Yeah, we're just waiting for San to take us off live.
We're still on. Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for listening. And as much as we can, serve Krishna's cows and preach. Preaching means sharing. I'm about to go share some prasadam in a minute. As soon as you turn this thing off, I'm going to share it with my stomach. Start a kirtan. Start a kirtan. So you're missing your time with the cows?
Yes, definitely.
Because you're a city girl now.
It's not so much a city here.
London?
I'm just outside.
Outside of London.
The manor is situated just outside of London, and there's also a cow protection program there. And on weekends, you can book into, if you're in the UK, on weekends you can book in to visit and take darshan of the deities, and also feed the cows every Saturday and Sunday. And
if you're in the northern New South Wales in Australia, we are at the Bullocks every morning from 9 a.m, 7 days a week. And you can get involved in feeding them, training them, picking up their poo, as you like. Plenty to do.
Okay, KK, our IT technician is having IT problems. So if you just click
hang up.
Yeah, we'll just hang up, and I'll call you back in a minute.
I'm going to bloop.
So thank you everyone again. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.